It always starts like this. A quiet evening, a long day, a drive home just like any other. But tonight, something is different. A car behind you, then another. You check your rearview mirror, nothing suspicious, just headlights. Then, out of nowhere, sirens, flashing lights. Your heart jumps into your throat. You tell yourself, relax, you haven't done anything wrong. But that's where you'd be mistaken. Because tonight, the police aren't here to uphold the law. They're here to break it. And their target? A man named Michael Fesser. A hard-working black man who had the nerve, the audacity, to stand up against racism at work. And for that, his boss decided to put him in handcuffs. With the help of some friends in uniform, of course. This isn't just a wrongful arrest. This is a setup. A conspiracy so reckless, so blatant, you almost have to wonder, did these guys even know how crime works? Because if they did, they wouldn't have left a trail of text messages. They wouldn't have wiretapped a man for no reason. And they definitely wouldn't have handed Michael Fesser a case so airtight he'd walk away with a six-figure payout. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let's go back, to the beginning, to the workplace where it all started, where Michael Fesser, an honest man, clocked in for work, never knowing he was about to become the target of a modern-day witch hunt. Let's dive in. Welcome to True Crime Stories videos. I welcome you, my viewers, and most especially my subscribers, for your support as we keep improving and bringing you daily told and untold true crime stories. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Let's talk about work. For most people, it's simple. You show up, you do your job, you go home. Unless, of course, you happen to be Michael Fesser. For him, work wasn't just about fixing cars and moving vehicles. It was about survival. See, Michael worked at A&B Towing in Oregon, a regular guy trying to earn an honest living. But in this workplace, honesty didn't matter. Hard work didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the color of his skin. And to his white colleagues, that was the punchline to every joke. "Hey, Michael, why don't you park those cars in the back, where you belong?" "Michael, you sure you're not stealing gas? You know how you people are." Oh yeah, real comedy geniuses here. Except the joke was on them. Because Michael wasn't the kind of guy to sit back and take it. He tried to ignore it. He tried to be the bigger man. But when you hear that day after day, week after week, at some point, enough is enough. One day, Michael makes a decision. He's had it. He's filing a formal racial discrimination complaint. Because this isn't just workplace banter, it's harassment. And here's the thing about racists. They love to talk tough. Until you call them out. That's when they get nervous. And no one was more nervous than his boss, Eric Benson. Now let's talk about Eric Benson, owner of A&B Towing, white, middle-aged, the kind of guy who probably calls himself a hard-working American while dodging taxes. Michael goes to him, lays it all out. The racism, the harassment, the toxic work environment. And Eric? He listens. He nods. He pretends to care. Then, the moment Michael leaves the office, he picks up the phone. Eric Benson wasn't about to let some black guy tell him how to run his company. He wasn't going to change anything. No. He was going to silence the problem, permanently. So he makes a call, not to HR, not to a lawyer, but to a friend. And not just any friend. The West Lynn police chief, Terry Timaeus. A man who, how do we put this nicely, had a history of bending the rules. And by bending, we mean shattering them into a million pieces. Benson lays it out for him. There's a problem. A troublemaker at his company. A guy who's playing the race card. And Benson? Well, he just wants to teach him a lesson. Timaeus listens, and in that moment, Michael Fesser's fate is sealed. Because these weren't just bad cops. They were dirty cops. And they were about to prove just how low they were willing to go. And just like that, a hard-working black man went from being an employee to being a target, to being a marked man. because Michael Fesser was about to be arrested for a crime. That never even happened. And what happens next? That's where the real crime begins. Imagine you're walking down the street, minding your business. And somewhere, someone you've never met is deciding your fate. Not because you committed a crime, but because they need you to be guilty. This question mark is the story of how Michael Fesser became a criminal, without ever breaking the law. Let's rewind. It's February 2017. Michael Fesser has officially become a problem for his boss, Eric Benson. And what do men like Benson do when they can't control a black man who speaks up? They silence him. Now, Benson isn't exactly a mastermind. He's not some criminal genius plotting in a dimly lit lair. No, his plan is, well, let's call it lazy racism. He calls up his buddies in the West Lynn Police Department and says, "Hey, I've got this guy. He's stealing from me." Now, let's pause right there. Because at no point does Benson provide evidence, no security footage, no missing cash, not even a staged photo of Michael holding a dollar bill looking suspicious. Nothing. But the police? Oh, they don't need proof. They just need a target, and they're already locked in. Now this is where things get truly illegal, because the West Lynn cops don't just take Benson's word for it. They go full-blown undercover operation. Except instead of investigating a real crime, they're investigating a black man who had the audacity to ask for respect. They wiretap Michael's phone, without a warrant. They listen to his calls, without cause. They track his movements, without justification. But guess what? Even after spying on him, they find nothing. No missing money, no secret offshore accounts, not even a crumpled-up $5 bill he forgot in his jeans. So, what do? Do they admit their mistake? Do they walk away? Oh no, they double down. February 25th, 2017. Just another day for Michael. He leaves work, gets into his car, and starts heading home. At this point, he has no idea that his fate has already been decided, that his boss, the police, and a fabricated crime are all working against him. That, just ahead, waiting in the shadows, is the moment his life is about to change forever. Because tonight, Michael Fesser isn't making it home. It happens fast. A dark SUV cuts him off. Another blocks him from behind. Before he can react, his doors fly open. And suddenly, Michael isn't a man driving home from work. He's a man being dragged from his car by plainclothes officers in unmarked vehicles. And here's the best part. They don't even tell him why. "Cop, step out of the vehicle." Michael is confused, shocked, but most of all, scared. Because in America, a black man being arrested without reason, that's a death sentence waiting to happen. The officers pat him down, they search his car, they confiscate his phone, and when he asks why, the answer is silence. No Miranda rights, no explanation, just a pair of cold metal handcuffs locking his fate in place. Michael Fesser, a hard-working man who had just finished his shift, was now a suspect in a crime that didn't exist. And this was only the beginning. Now, if you thought this was already bad, buckle up. Because Michael isn't just arrested, he's taken to jail, locked in a cold, fluorescent-lit room. No lawyer, no idea what's happening. For hours, he's interrogated. They demand answers. They pressure him to confess. To what? Even they don't know. Michael Fesser isn't a criminal, but that doesn't matter, because when the system decides you're guilty, you don't stand a chance. Finally, after hours of confusion and fear, they let him go. No charges, no explanation, just a silent warning. Stay quiet, or next time you won't be so lucky. Michael walks out of that station a free man, but not the same man, because now he knows the truth. This wasn't just an arrest. It was a message, a power play, a way to remind him that no matter how hard he worked, no matter how much he fought, people like him weren't supposed to win. But what they didn't know, Michael Fesser wasn't just going to walk away, because if they thought this was over, they were about to find out. This was just the beginning. They thought they had won. They thought Michael Fesser would be too scared, too broken to fight back. They thought he'd take his brush with injustice and quietly move on. Well, they thought wrong. Michael walks out of that police station, technically a free man. No charges, no record. But something feels wrong. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't a case of bad paperwork or a miscommunication. This was intentional, deliberate. Like he had stepped into someone else's game without realizing the rules were rigged from the start. So, Michael does something that wasn't part of their plan. He starts digging. Now, Michael isn't a detective. He doesn't have a badge. He doesn't have a crime lab. Hell, he doesn't even have access to the police report about his own arrest. But what he does have is anger. And anger makes people dangerous. So, he gets himself an attorney. And that's when things start falling apart. Because if the police thought this was over, they were about to realize they left behind one hell of a paper trail. It starts with the arrest report, or rather, the lack of one. See, in a normal case, police have evidence. They have witness statements, reports, warrants, something. But here, nothing. Not a single shred of legitimate evidence that Michael Fesser did anything wrong. Instead, they find something way worse. Because this wasn't just a bad arrest. It was never about a crime at all. It was about a favor. A handshake deal between a corrupt business owner and his friends in uniform. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, it does. Because guess what surfaces? Text messages between Eric Benson and the West Lynn police chief. Now, let me set the scene for you. Imagine you're planning a fake arrest. A crime that never happened. You'd probably want to keep it discreet, right? Well, not these guys. Nope. They put everything in writing, like a bunch of criminals who have never seen a true crime documentary in their lives. Here's how it went down. Benson. Hey, I need a favor. This guy's causing problems. Police chief. Say less. I mean, not those exact words, but pretty damn close. These messages confirm everything. The arrest was planned in advance. It was done without a warrant. And worst of all, the cops knew it was illegal, because at one point, one of them actually jokes about it. That's right. They turned a man's life into a casual group chat. Now, at this point, Michael's case isn't just a personal battle. It's a time bomb. Because when these messages go public, oh, the internet does what it does best. People start calling out the West Lynn Police Department. They demand answers. They demand accountability. And most of all, they demand justice. Because Michael Fesser isn't just one man anymore. He's a symbol. A walking reminder that corruption isn't just a big city problem. It's in small-town police stations. It's in corporate boardrooms. It's in quiet suburbs where people swear nothing bad ever happens. And suddenly, this story isn't just about Michael. It's about all the people who never got the chance to prove their innocence. So now, the system has a choice. Do they admit their mistake, or do they double down? Spoiler alert, they panic. The police chief resigns, the officers scramble for legal cover. Eric Benson starts sweating bullets. Because now, it's not just a lawsuit, it's a full-blown scandal. And when the legal hammer finally drops, it's going to drop hard. So, let's review. Michael Fesser, a man who did nothing wrong, was set up, arrested, and humiliated by people who never thought they'd get caught. But instead of staying silent, he fought back. And now, the truth is out. The police are exposed. The legal system is under pressure. And Michael Fesser, he's about to get justice. But here's the thing about fighting corruption. When you take one enemy down, you often find more waiting in the shadows. Because this fight is far from over. And what comes next? Well, it's going to be explosive. The walls were closing in. The police had their backs against the wall. The corrupt boss was sweating through his cheap suit. And Michael Fesser? Well, he was just getting started. Now, if the West Lynne police thought Michael would take his false arrest, ruined reputation, and blatant discrimination like a good little citizen, they must have missed the memo. Because Michael wasn't just angry. He wasn't just looking for an apology. He was looking for justice. And justice was about to get expensive. So, in 2018, Michael Fesser files a lawsuit. Not just against A and B Towing, but against the entire West Lynne Police Department. A bold move, a risky move, but also a necessary one, because someone had to make these people pay. Now, you know how in movies, when the villain's evil empire starts crumbling, their henchmen suddenly jump ship like rats on the Titanic? Yeah, that's exactly what happened here. As soon as Michael's lawsuit gained traction, officers started resigning, one by one. First, it was the police chief himself, the man who had personally orchestrated the whole setup. Gone. Disgraced. Probably working as a mall cop now, if that. Then, other officers followed. Each one stepping down, each one suddenly realizing that maybe, just maybe, getting caught doing illegal favors for a rich buddy was a career-ending move. Oops. Now let's talk about the money, because justice doesn't come cheap. And the court? Made sure of that. After months of legal battles, Michael Fesser wins. Big. First up, $600,000. That's what the city of West Lynne had to pay Michael for wrongfully arresting him. Oh, but we're not done. Because remember, this wasn't just about the false arrest. This started with racism and A and B Towing. They were about to feel that reality in their bank account. Michael gets an additional $415,000 for the racial discrimination he faced at work. That brings the grand total to over $1 million. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was Benson, I'd be Googling how to flee the country undetected. So, let's check in on Eric Benson, shall we? Remember him? The big-shot business owner who thought he could call up his police buddies like they were his personal attack dogs? Yeah. Turns out that kind of power trip doesn't age well. After the lawsuit, A and B Towing takes a huge hit. Clients cut ties. The business gets dragged through the mud. And Benson? Well, he becomes a walking PR disaster. People don't just see him as a bad boss anymore. They see him as a racist, a liar, a man who would frame his own employee just to keep him quiet. And trust me, that's a reputation you don't recover from. Now, at this point, the West Lynne Police Department was in damage control mode. Because when you've been caught doing something this corrupt, you really only have two options. 1. Own up to it, make real changes, and attempt to fix the broken system. Or 2. Release a vague, half-hearted apology that sounds like a lawyer wrote it 5 minutes before a press conference. Guess which one they picked? The department issues a public statement. Something about how they regret the events that transpired. How they acknowledge mistakes were made. How they hope to rebuild trust with the community. Blah, blah, blah. Translation: we got caught, and we'd really appreciate it if you stopped talking about it now. Yeah. Nice try. Now, let's take a step back. Michael Fesser won. The corrupt cops lost their jobs. A and B Towing got what was coming. So, case closed, right? I wish it were that simple. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Michael's case only came to light because he fought back. Because he had the resources, the persistence, and the sheer willpower to expose the corruption. But how many other people? How many others have been silenced? How many innocent people have been set up, arrested, and thrown away like they didn't matter? Michael's case ended with a victory, but it also left behind a haunting question. How many others never got their day in court? So, what do we take away from this? That power, when unchecked, leads to corruption. That some people in law enforcement are willing to abuse their badges for personal favors. That racism isn't just about words and insults, it's about actions. And sometimes, the people sworn to serve and protect are the same ones who will try to destroy you. Michael Fesser fought back, and he won. But his story, it's just one battle in a much bigger war, and that's the part we should never forget. Imagine waking up one morning, going to work, doing your job, and by the time the sun sets, you've been framed for a crime you didn't commit, handcuffed, thrown into the back of a police car, your reputation destroyed, your freedom stolen, your crime simply standing up for yourself. Michael Fesser's case wasn't just a bad day. It wasn't a series of unfortunate events. It was a blueprint, a step-by-step guide to how power is abused, how money and influence can turn law enforcement into someone's personal hit squad, how innocent people can be dragged through the system not because they did anything wrong, but because they dared to question authority. And that should terrify you. Because if it could happen to Michael, it could happen to anyone. Michael Fesser had something most victims of police corruption don't have: resources, a lawyer, a platform, and most importantly, he had the receipts. But what about the people who don't? What about the ones who get framed but have no way to prove it? What about the ones who sit in a jail cell right now because they couldn't afford to fight back? What about the ones who just disappear into the system? Because let's be honest, if Michael hadn't fought back, if those text messages never leaked, if he had just taken the arrest quietly, do you really think those officers would have stopped? Would they have suddenly found their moral compass? Or would they have done it again, to the next person who spoke out? And the next, and the next. Here's the ugly truth. Corruption doesn't stop when it's exposed. It doesn't vanish when one case gets attention. It just gets smarter, sneakier, more careful with its text messages. Because as much as we'd like to believe this was a one-time incident, it wasn't. It never is. It's a pattern, a cycle, one that will keep repeating unless more people are willing to stand up and fight back. So what can you do? Well, you might not have the power to reform the entire system overnight. You might not be able to hold corrupt cops accountable all by yourself. But what you can do is keep the spotlight on cases like this. Because stories like Michael Fesser's, they matter. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be remembered. And the more people who know, the harder it gets for corruption to hide. So I'll leave you with this. If Michael Fesser hadn't fought back, if he had just taken the charges, done the time, and faded into the system, would those officers still be abusing their power today? Would they have moved on to someone else? And if the answer is yes, how many more are out there right now doing the exact same thing without getting caught? Now, if you believe in holding those in power accountable, hit that like button. Subscribe for more shocking true crime stories that need to be heard. And drop a comment below. What are your thoughts on this case? Because the more we talk about it, the harder it gets for stories like this to be buried.